Hello. Hi, everyone.
Oh,
Hi, Will. Hi, Anushka.
how you doing?
Amazing. Thank you. How are you both doing?
Very well, thank you. The sun is shining. Everyone in London's a bit happier.
So true. Hello to everyone joining. We're just going to give it a minute or two while we wait for people to come in and get the notification to join. But we're so excited to have you here and joining us this afternoon. Yeah, say hello in the chat if you'd like to. You're welcome to use it and introduce yourself. Is the sun shining where you are? Any of that? Hello.
And where you're from.
Oh, yeah, good one. Where are you currently, Anushka?
I'm currently in Mexico, hence the tan, so excuse that.
Lovely. I'm
thinking whether so let's hope I break this one with me.
Oh, yes, please. Awesome. Good to see everyone joining. All right, just going to give it a minute and then we'll get started. People to join. Oh, nice. The sun kind of shining is enough. It's trying its best to come out. Love that. I'll try to keep our break together. Amazing. Blue skies. We love to see it. All right. I think we're ready to get started. Just some general housekeeping before we do. Welcome to today's webinar, everybody. We're so excited to have you here. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day or your lunch break to come join us. As you'll see, we're joined by two amazing people. I know you get sick and tired of seeing just me, so brought some guests with me this time. So yeah, we've got Will, who's a community and content manager at Boundless Snacks, and Anushka as well, who takes care of digital content at Zable. And this is a really, really exciting webinar because, as you can tell by the title as well, we're going to be speaking about the creator brand disconnect. So I've had the privilege of working with both Will and Anushka on both sides, dealing with content briefs with them, managing the creators on their side, and also helping them with chasing for their own projects too as creators and seeing their creativity come to life in that other way too. So I'm sure we're going to cover everything related to that today. But for starters, I'm Rachel. I take care of content and creative strategy at Twirl, where we help brands and agencies scale their UGC production by connecting you with a network of 4,000 plus content creators to really amplify your customer voice through authentic storytelling. So yeah, now we're going to hand over to the speakers so you can get to know a bit about them before we crack on. So ladies first, Anushka.
Hi everyone, it's lovely to meet you all. So as Rachel kindly introduced me, I do a bit of both of sort of digital content and strategy and also creating my own content. My background actually starts in data analytics, and then a couple of years after boredom in that, I switched to the dark side. So yeah, now I do all things strategy. I work in finance and yeah.
Exciting. Thank you very much. All right, let's hand it over to Will.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks for introducing Rachel. I am currently community and content manager at Boundless. We're a food and drink brand, so kind of a lot of D2C and in retail. My kind of background work-wise, I've always been in disruptive marketing. So I used to work at Zable, a beer company beforehand, doing a lot of their disruptive social media, and switched over to Boundless, where it's much more focused on kind of overall digital marketing. And then along the side, doing my own sort of social media kind of started as a bit of a hobby, but can quickly grow, and that using Twirl for UGC stuff at the same time.
Amazing, so exciting. So yeah, you clearly have the same sort of formats, both creator as a brand, but it's also quite interesting that you come from different like industries almost. But yeah, so just a bit about what we're going to be covering today. This lovely one of your early UGC videos that you did with Twirl. But yeah, we're going to be looking at, briefing, finding the right creator, and also how to balance the brand messaging throughout the session. And so this is the sort of structure that it's going to follow, some different points. And just as a recap, we will be sending you all resources at the end of this, kind of a summary of what we talk about, so you can present it to your team or just take it to heart and have learnings on your end. But yeah, also, if you stay to the very end, we do have a discount code that we will be providing if you do want to get started with Twirl or you have an upcoming campaign. We'll be sharing a discount code with that in case it helps you make that decision. But yeah, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that we can see all your beautiful faces. Amazing. Okay, and let's get into it. So let's start with the basics. How did you both get started with UGC? Getting started from the brand side first? Were you working in marketing, or did you kind of come across content creation and then want to work into marketing from there? Just kind of a bit of a background to both. Maybe Anushka, you want to start?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, like I said, I have a bit of a weird background, but I first started out in data analytics many years ago, and I basically discovered that I wasn't just data driven. I had some sort of creative urge within me. So I started sharing content when I was 18, just about my life, about being a young professional, starting out in the working world so young. And it was through sharing that experience on all platforms, LinkedIn, TikTok, etc., that I sort of discovered UGC and creative strategy when it wasn't even called that yet. So I was there before the cool kids. So it was a really interesting journey, and I've sort of come at it at this hybrid lens of strategy, storytelling, whilst being very data driven. So yeah, I think it's a very in the trenches experience when you come from, being a creator that doesn't know how to navigate the world of what was once not named, to now being in this really exciting field of, working with both sides and being a creator through Twirl was something that I sort of stumbled across from working with another client of mine at the time. So Rachel and I go way back. I actually saw in our memories the other day, which I forgot to tell you, 2 years ago, we had our first call this week. So
no way. That's so funny. That's so cute. No, yeah, that's amazing. Especially like going from when it's people always knew UGC, but it wasn't really what it was today. So it's really amazing that, you being at the start of that really has helped shape what it has become today, I feel like. And yeah, Will, let's hear from you.
Yeah, slightly different side. I think for Boundless, we've kind of had a bit more of a focus on D2C channels, and kind of last year we were really looking at driving that sort of paid media side, and we're looking at options and came across Twirl, started using them for our briefs. And I think I'd always been producing content from my own side, but thought UGC, here's a little opportunity for me to kind of develop my skills, but also get a bit of extra cash on the side. So then started doing Twirl kind of on the side, and then combining kind of my overall experience with both brand and the UGC to help kind of leverage both my sides, so my personal and the brand content, kind of really understanding what connects with people and resonates. So coming from more of a brand side, that's it.
Amazing. Yeah, and it's also just like assurance to, anyone watching here who maybe you have always been on the brand side and, haven't really done much of the creating yourself. Like, I feel like it's a huge meme in the marketing world, like social media manager who has a private account with 200 followers doesn't post anything. Like, that's completely fine as well. We're not here to say that, you need to be a creator in order to be really good at your job. But hopefully, by hearing the insights from both sides, you get a bit more of the takeaways from that and can implement that into your own strategy at your day-to-day as well. So yeah, fresh and simple. Let's start with the briefs. What is one thing, when you're creating a brief, and as a creator, when you're reviewing briefs, that really makes it feel clear and actionable to you? Like what's one thing that really stands out to you? Anushka, do you want to go?
Yeah, definitely. I think now sort of seeing things in terms of paid social and writing briefs for UGC, you sort of become allergic to the fluff. And by that, I mean, like, you just focus directly on clarity and not control. I think a good brief is like a bit of a map, more than a script, because it guides without dictating exactly word for word what a creator should say. I think you need to provide, your CTAs and your strong hooks, but that sort of scripting is what's important when it comes to writing a good brief, because at the end of the day, the creator needs to feel like they're able to action your ask. So complete control isn't going to do that, in my opinion. You need to sort of give that leeway. So I would say that's the most important.
Amazing. And what about you, Will? What do you find like the most helpful to include early on? Is it like the brand voice, the hooks, or video examples?
I think going back to the start, and you can look at this from both a creator and a brand point of view, I think authenticity is key. For example, we make snacks, and I myself am not a chef. And when I try and make kind of cooking videos, it doesn't feel authentic to the audience, and people they can really relate to that, and they go, well, this isn't authentic, this isn't natural. So we would use kind of UGC in the sense of finding people who are really good at kind of driving what they want. And I think from the creator side, I'm never going to pick a brief that I know doesn't feel authentic. So when you're kind of looking from a brand for creators, I think you really want to find people that are great at delivering kind of that style of content. It might be amazing at editing and amazing at doing something. But if you want a personable piece of content, that's not going to probably be the right creator for that brief, because they're not going to be authentic. And I think people online, especially if you're using it for paid media, really can tell quite quickly if that is authentic, rather than someone just pretending to sell something that they don't really care about. So I think authenticity and kind of choosing the right creator definitely is the top of the list before kind of even writing the brief from my side.
That's so true. It's so important to really write briefs that actually support the creator instead of like suffocating and limiting their creativity. In a lot of my calls as well, we have a lot of pain points where it's like, how do you actually give the creator enough guidance, so that it aligns with your brand voice, but of course not kill the creativity in itself. So let's talk about that a little bit. Anushka, I know with the briefs you put through for Zable, you often leave lots of room for the creators to be super creative, experiment with their hooks. So can you talk a little bit about why that freedom is so valuable, even when, obviously at the end of the day, performance is a goal for you?
Yes, definitely. So I guess an insight to us is that I sort of was the first creative to join the team when I started working there. And I think that we've taken this, well, I'm lucky to say that my bosses and just the whole company in general is very open to creativity. Often if you work in finance or fintech, it's quite boxed up. But, as long as you're following the right rules, etc., creativity is encouraged, which I think is the most important part. And I think that freedom of creativity actually breeds the originality, much like Will was talking about, of that authentic self. Because at the end of the day, saying to a creator in the script or in the brief, make it sound authentic, is not going to work. And I have seen that too many times. So I think that that sort of defeats the purpose. And, sometimes it's like you need to trust the creator and not do that sort of overpowering parent control. Because if you chose them, there's a reason you have, through their portfolio or something, whatever, like that they're a top creator on Twirl, etc. So I think it's important, because that is inevitably what drives the success. So that performance side of things comes through the originality of their creative hook or something different. And I think with us, we like to try new things because we want new creative winners often, and with efficiency, right? So in that way, you can't do the whole overbearing control thing because it takes too much time. It stresses and drains the creativity of the video or the thought that a creator might have. So yeah, I think that whilst things like editing and quality of content is probably very key and very important, I think that after that you can then sort of relax on scripting things like tone, because tone is natural and that is what will drive an audience to actually feel like they're talking or listening to just a normal person, someone who is really the customer. And I think that's why I like UGC and Twirl in particular, because it's so customer friendly that, they act as the consumer. And I think that is what the market misses a lot these days.
Amazing. Lots of valuable wisdom there. Will, did you have anything to add to that as well?
Yeah, I think from my side, I think, and actually maybe looking more at a creator side here, I think the best briefs are, as Anushka said, the ones that aren't really too script heavy, because ultimately, if I see something which doesn't sound like me, but they're like, you need to follow this word by word, it's not authentic. And I think from a brand side, the best thing you can do is really tell the creator what emotion you're trying to invoke, what tone of voice your brand is, and give them that creative freedom on the script. If they know that you're trying to be this is an educating piece of content, then they can work to like their own script. Or if it needs to be kind of inspiring or entertaining, they can do that themselves. But if you put in the red tape of saying you need to follow this word by word, suddenly it just completely removes that creative freedom. And ultimately kind of the piece of content is not going to be and have that authenticity that the customer really wants at the end. So I think the best briefs are the ones that kind of really clearly lay out what you're trying to achieve with this piece of content, like maybe how it's going to be used. Like, we're using this for paid media, this is going to be organic, or this is going to be targeted at XYZ customer. And then it really gives that creator the freedom to kind of work within their own skill set to drive success from there.
I love that word you use, like evoking emotion in the viewer, because that's really what makes storytelling so compelling, I think, and that's actually a really good point as well to kind of put in your briefs, like what is the emotion, because then creators can like portray that as well. I'd love to better understand that as well, with obviously so many talented creators out there, how do you kind of mix that, like this is what emotion we want, but also do it in a way that encourages the creator to really understand what you mean by that? Do you have any practical tips for putting that into the brief or making that clear?
I think kind of on that, let's say our brand's quite bold, happy, outgoing, and the best thing you can do as a brand is probably attaching an example of some of the content that you've produced as well. I think the best briefs as a creator I've seen is one that says, this is the style we're going for. So if you can have any, I guess, pre-existing content which is similar to what you're trying to do, that's really, really helpful for a creator, and it'll help them kind of give a bit more narrative to the brief. But in terms of kind of content, it's having sort of your clear brand tone of voice, and I guess it's interesting. You don't want to give it too much direction, because then it reduces the freedom. But just, I think examples are probably the best thing you can do to attach that. And if it means you've got a piece of content that maybe is not polished, but showing them this is sort of what we're going for, is it example video that you do for that brief? Like, that might be quite helpful for someone.
Yeah, that's so true. What's your go-to resource for examples, actually? Because we get quite a mix of like Pinterest or like scrolling on TikTok or even like previous top performers. Do you have and you and too, Anushka, do you have like a source for examples and inspiration videos?
Yeah, so I was actually going to say that with sort of examples, I actually like to lead in the sense of just giving them our ad libraries. My experience is probably different to Will's, because like I said, my industry is very small and we don't do, like, finance and tech in general ads aren't maybe always my inspo. And sometimes we'll find some that are really good from another whatever competitor, but it's rare. And I do feel like we're heading in this fresh direction where we're driving for success. So I like to see that now that we're at a comfortable point of creative winners and we know what is working for us, we like them to see people we've already worked with and just being able to take inspiration from what works, because that is where we'll already have things like CTAs and hooks and language that's important to us, especially being a very financial jargon. It's not nice to hear all the time. So it's like things like that we know we do correctly. So in that sense, it's the non-pushy way to show someone as a creator how to talk as a brand like us, if that makes sense.
I was going to say on that as well, I think, and if you're just sort of starting UGC and you don't have that ad library yourself, we often use like Facebook ad library or Meta ad library. So brands that you kind of like, or maybe are a similar example to what you're doing. I'm sure you've come across ads the whole time, but for us, some good inspiration might be like Dash Water, or there's lots on there, but you basically, anyone can access it, and you just search up a brand that you like and you can see every single ad that's live across Meta and kind of see what works. You can't see their sort of statistics from it, but you can kind of find the ones which really fit that tone of voice you're going for if you don't have pre-existing ads that have worked for you. So that's a really good place to start to kind of help you, especially guide the brief as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think so too, because that's what I was mentioning in the sense of like Zable's ad libraries and Zable's like particular thing. But you make a good point that if it's not there, then where else do you go?
That's so true. Also, those TikTok top ads, you can always see like the top performers of that week, and you can like filter by industry or even by the objective if it was like for conversion or engagement. So that's a good one too. But yeah, let's go more on to now. Actually, like we've spoken a bit about like making sure that it's the right fit of the creator that actually gets your brand and everything. But on your side as a creator, when you're applying to briefs, what makes you feel like, okay, I am a good fit for this? And is there anything, on the brand side there that they can do more of so that creators feel, compelled and even like super excited to apply to the brief? Whoever wants to go first.
I think we, in a sense of kind of having a bit more creative freedom really works. I think you, as a creator, you never want to be shut into a really narrow box, although sometimes that is like the easiest one for a creator. But I think the goal for a brand is to get people that are really engaged and kind of want to apply. So if you make it too easy for someone with the script laid out, that this is exactly what you need to do second by second, you might get people who are just after a quick job, for example. And actually, if you can say, kind of, we're looking for someone who, for us, it might be interested in healthier like living, like snacking, and wanting to do a little bit better for themselves, and kind of putting that in the brief as well. You get people, and especially in the what's it called, the applications, you can see people who have gone into a bit more depth of saying, well, actually, yeah, I've been vegan for 5 years and I can really engage with this because I do X, Y, Z, and suddenly you can get a lot more quality in sort of the people who are applying to you. So I think giving a bit of sort of structure of your, a bit more insight into your brand and what you're looking for, and leaving the brief more open will actually encourage better sort of applicants with people who have got more to say about that topic.
That's true. Anushka, did you want to add to that? I know as well for you, it's like sometimes it's less about like the actual how they resonate with your like service, and more about how they can speak to people who relate to the pain points that someone might face. What do you look for in like creator profiles, and what's usually best for you?
Yeah,
or
definitely.
red flag even.
I think that the first question I would always ask is, would this creator genuinely use or recommend our product? And I think the reason that's so important is because, as I said before, especially a brand like us, we need the consumer-friendly look. And I think even off camera, you should give off the vibe that you would use our product. And that goes for any brand, really. I think it's not just about their particular sort of numbers. It's more about, you know, their resonance and their alignment to that sort of product. Like, for example, people that like to travel a lot, we don't have a foreign transaction fee on our cards. So things like that would help to promote that particular CTA. That was just a random example, but you know what I'm saying? Like somebody who we could actually see them use Zable in their day-to-day life. And actually, a lot of the time what happens is they end up taking out a product with us. Like I know one of the creators that we highly recommend and use often, she has a Zable credit card. So I think that is really nice. It's a nice feeling to be able to work with people who genuinely know and love us.
Oh, sorry, I was going to add,
No,
I mean, we spoke about this before, but I think if you're starting sort of small and you're looking for that right creator, sometimes you might go after creators who you think are your consumer. And yes, that's great because hopefully they will then relate to your customer. But actually, Anushka made a good point when we were chatting before, and it's what you don't really know is if you use a new creator in a new audience, suddenly you might unlock a whole new customer set that you didn't realize was interested in your product. So I don't think it's necessary to always go after people who you think is your target consumer. If they fit the right sort of tone of voice and kind of, as Anushka said, potentially would use the product outside of the brief, then they could be a great fit. And actually, they might relate to a whole new audience, which you haven't realized you had. So definitely it's worth exploring people who, if you think they're sort of the correct personality and have the correct skills for the brief, doesn't need to be the bang on customer type or your brand profile that you kind of have created already.
Yeah, I think with each like sort of person that you'll select as well, as you said, Will, like you'll sort of see their resemblance. So I guess what I meant is that they don't have to, we have lots of different, as any brand does, you have a lot of different customer types, right? So, you know, in previous times we've sort of picked people that we don't usually maybe would have picked, but you're right that you might think, oh, I really like their tone or, you know, their presence, and we think that their engagement with another niche could work with ours. And that's why I think on Twirl, if I'm right, we have the option to pick their niches, and I almost never select any, or maybe like all plus app, because we have an app, so it's nice when people have worked with apps. But yeah, we've most definitely worked with creators who haven't worked in finance or tech before, and then we use them and realize that, you know, they're actually really great. But it's just nice to see that conversion, that they actually end up knowing and loving us. So it is a great sort of idea to target both of those areas for sure.
Yeah, that's so interesting as well, because we do get, you know, lots of creators who maybe work one time with a brand, but they end up like repurchasing the product as well because they love it so much, or they'll come back and they'll be like, hey, you know, I have a new video idea. Can we share this with them? You know, and that's something at Twirl we're trying to facilitate more of, kind of like a more collaborative approach. But I love what you said about how, like, because they become more long-term clients, corporate speak, you end up like working with the creators long term. And I know, Anushka, you've, like you mentioned, you've got a favorite creator. How does that sort of like influence your strategy then? Do you then brief with that in mind? And what are the sort of benefits from working with creators long term?
I think the benefits are definitely building, one, a stable relationship between you and the creator. And I guess that's what this panel is about. You sort of, you have fixed that creator brand disconnect when you build longevity in a relationship like that. I also think that I want to highlight that it's not just that we use one person and there's no like real favoritism. It's just that we found someone who works. And I think that sometimes it's nice to have people like that on your roster, in terms of creative, because you know that they're willing to try new things, they understand you. And so what we like to do is sort of A/B test that, in the sense that, you know, we have these really great, this bubble of people we know and love, and then there is a bracket of people we don't know yet. So let's say each month we, I don't know, hire, let's say 6 UGC creators from Twirl. Maybe there's 3 that are people we've used before and we know that they've performed really well, and 3 that we don't know and we just want to try them out. So I think it's that sort of, in some sense, a disconnect of being able to actually manage those relationship aspects all throughout, and not just being like, you know, okay, yeah, this one person. I think that the way that we found that one person is through trialing and testing. So why would we stop that? Because that's how we found someone before, and that's how we're going to keep finding it in the future.
I love that. Yeah. Will, anything to add to that before we go into the Q&A? I've just realized the time as well.
I think you've got enough on that.
Amazing. Yeah. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. I did just want to ask one last question before we go. Just a final thought. It could be what I wish more brands knew, or what I wish more creators knew. How would you finish that sentence? Awesome. Anyone? Will or Anushka?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Oh, sorry. It's just finish the sentence. What I wish more brands knew.
I think ultimately the creators are on there they don't want a piece of content that does badly. I think the success in the creator is seeing something and then seeing it post online and it doing really well. So they really want the content to perform. So if you can provide a brief which really kind of resonates with them, they're going to do everything they can to make it work for them. It's not just a quick sort of win for them. It's actually something that, because they use that for their portfolio, and if it's done really well, they're more likely to get better briefs. So I think understanding that a creator also wants the best for the thing, and giving them every opportunity kind of within the brief to give that the best chance of success.
Amazing. Yeah. Anushka, any last words?
Yeah, sure. I guess what I wish more brands knew is that the best performing creatives come from that trust and not control, like I mentioned before. And I think it's important to understand that this sort of UGC and working with 12 creators, it's not transactional. It's more like a relationship. And as we all know, relationships thrive on trust and respect and not rigid control. So I think just keeping that in mind, as I mentioned at the start, in terms of briefs, very important.
Amazing. Thank you both. All right, we'll go into a Q&A section now. I can already see there's one question there below. But yeah, the session is recorded, so if you do need to hop off, feel free to go. The discount code, which will be shared with all your emails as well, is just webinar5 for 5% off your purchase, whether that's one video or more. It'll work for that. So yeah, if you want to use it, webinar5. But yeah, let's get into the Q&A now. Feel free to just put your questions below and we'll pick up on it. But yeah, first question here. My paid social agency asks for different creators every new round, not many rounds. Sometimes it feels a little disposable of the UGC creators. So would you, from your day-to-day job perspective, disagree? No right or wrong answer. Thank you for that.
I think it's an interesting one because it depends how you're, I guess, using the content. I think there's something really important about that, building that trust with a creator, and then building the trust with your audience. Because if the audience who's watching your videos sees a creator over and over again, they're understanding more about that person, they're developing a familiarity. And if they've liked a previous video with them, once they see that face again, they're more likely to watch that person. And it's as simple as like brands using now their founders or social media managers to be the face of the brand, because you're building a familiarity. So if you've got a creator who you know is performing, then I almost think there is more value in using them again, because you're building that familiarity and trust with your audience.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the other side to that is that I do understand in some sense that brands could feel that using the same person over and over again is maybe overkill, in the sense that when you're scrolling and you see a certain face too many times, you know that it's an ad because you've seen them before. And that's definitely a problem I've had in the past when I've been the face for a brand and you need some more variety. But at the end of the day, as Will said, you do need relationships in that sense, because in some sense it brings that familiarity across to the screen. So actually what I would recommend to an agency like that is having the combination where you have a few people that you use over and over again, and then you also have that sort of every single time there's somebody new and someone new to the mix. And I think that is the way you could find that you have more creative winners anyway.
Amazing. Thank you both. If anyone has any other questions, do feel free to share. I did find one question that somebody who couldn't make it wanted asked. Let me just find it here. It was, how do you handle revisions when the first version isn't quite hitting the mark, but you still want to keep the creator's tone of voice intact? I feel like revisions are also a huge part of the creative process and often takes up, another week of it. So any advice to that, handling revisions?
Yeah, I think that the way that I handle revisions is firstly getting a second opinion. I'm very lucky to have a supportive manager who will often sit through them with me if I need to. And I think that that's the first step, being able to get a second opinion, what other people think, because at the end of the day, you're trying to think like the audience, right, that you're trying to put this out to. So that's the first step of the second opinion. Then secondly, I would always say that, you guys at Twirl, you're really helpful. I think that often what happens if their tone is really great, maybe the editing is off. And so obviously Rachel's got a great team who can help with the editing and directing if you don't want to do the confrontation. So
that's what we're for.
That is what the middleman is for, so use it. And I think they're really helpful. So just being able to maybe clearly put into words what you're trying to say to at least the team, that could help with getting a turnaround. But I completely understand. I've been there with the frustration of, I want to put this live tomorrow and I'm not happy with the editing, and then it takes a few more days. So sometimes it is just better to ask the team rather than waiting for longer. But yeah, Will.
Yeah, I think kind of from a creator side of view, when I'm filming something, I often do quite a few takes anyway. So often the creator will have multiple versions of the same sort of part, and actually it might be quite a quick thing to just sub one in and out. So potentially, I wouldn't say you don't ask it on the brief, because it will annoy them if you ask them to do loads of different takes. But I think it's often just a case of being like, can we tweak this slightly? But ultimately it all comes from the original brief. If it's not kind of the right brief originally, there's going to be a lot more revision. So I think it's really spending a long time on the brief and making sure it's detailed enough with exactly what you want. And actually the revisions then will be very, very minor. Whereas if it's kind of you've set out a brief and the video seems completely wrong, it's actually not the creator's fault. It's unfortunately the brief's fault, which kind of has not been enough kind of depth on what they're trying to achieve. So I think it'll be very clear once you kind of get videos back, kind of if your brief has hit the mark or not, or if you need a bit more depth for the next time you kind of brief creators.
Yeah, that's so true. And also, like, to help with that, with Twirl, like, we now do facilitate like script sharing as well. So, if the creator does want to prepare kind of like a rough outline of what they're talking about, we can share that to the brand as well. So, you can double check that they're headed in the right direction. I know, especially with like in finance, or if you're in a heavily regulated industry as well, it is important to make sure that certain things are worded a correct way. And the creators appreciate that too. Last thing they want is like, oh, you need to reshoot this entire thing because you said one sentence completely wrong, So good to iron out those details in the beginning. But yeah, thanks so much. There aren't any other questions, but of course, if anything does come up, do feel free to send an email, or even, in the follow-up email, you'll you should have already received, like Anushka's LinkedIn, Will's LinkedIn. So of course, if you want to connect and carry on the conversation, you're more than welcome to. But yeah, thanks both for joining me today. It was so lovely to have you and sharing your wisdom. We really appreciate your time. And yeah, looking forward to the next webinar the last Thursday of every month at 2 p.m. So stay tuned for the next one, hopefully. But yeah,
Thank you
thanks
so
both.
much for having us.
Thank you very much for having us. Thank everyone for joining.
Thanks for joining, everyone. We'll be in touch.
Bye.
Bye.